Ouais. Ah, ça serait pas mal. Hello, hello, everybody. We are Thursday, the 26th of September. I don't want to even mention already. I'm going to also make my background a little bit blurry. This way, it's going to be nice and more and clear, right? So, welcome, everybody. Welcome to those who are overseas. It's here 10:15 a.m. exactly and sharp, EDT, Eastern Standard Time, New York time. But you are all over the place as I see the statistics. And my microphone is really not very visible. It's a beautiful microphone, so I want this to be visible, but it's not going to be, we cannot have everything, right? 1 second. Let me show, let me, voila. No, it's not working. I see, I don't have any producer right now, so I do everything myself. I am happy to have you today for a topic that is very dear to me. It is about dispute. It's about conflict resolution. But before I do that, I just again want to make sure that those who are watching us on YouTube subscribe to YouTube if you didn't do it yet. It's so important to us. You have no idea. You hear people say, please subscribe. Here, I don't beg you. It's a big advantage because this is the way we can really track who's watching, what do we adjust in our content, how do we adapt it to our audience, etc., etc. So it is crucial, and we are pushing YouTube because we haven't done that until now. We've been very focused on LinkedIn, especially, and X Twitter. I think that the rest, Facebook, not really, but it's streaming on it. It's streaming on Instagram, not really focusing on it. And then podcast, the Spotify, the Amazon podcast, the Apple podcast. This is a little bit lazy over there because I need to take the recording of this and load it up there. So I share all my details with you. But this is important to say. This is not something, this weekly event takes a lot. And that's why I appreciate so much that you are coming back for those who are loyal to it because it's now every Thursday at 10:15 a.m. It's a good time for Europe. It's a good time for the US. It's a good time for the West Coast either, for those early birds that wake up at 7 o'clock. And it's also good for Asia to some who are going late to bed at night. So this is what I think is the best time for You Change the World. And why is it You Change the World? I sometimes take the time to explain because it's a very pompous title. It's not me who changed the world, it's you. You changed the world. And then some people said, "Oh my gosh, you freak me out with this kind of thing. What makes you say that I do such a thing?" And I say to him or to her, what I mean, or to a group of people, is that you have no idea how much you do that. You have no idea if you have any responsibility as a leader, as a family hold, as a person who is in charge of a community, who is in charge of a meeting, who takes responsibility for just an hour to talk to a friend, to talk to someone dear, show that this person care, actively listen to this person problem, issue, that person seeking for friendship, for warmth, for caring, then I think you change the world of that person. And it says in the Bible, that's where the source of many things are, if not everything, is that a human being, one person, is a whole world. A life is a whole world. So if you change someone's mindset, if you pull someone from depression, if you hold the hand, I'm sorry, really, I never knew I would say that to you, but it comes to my mind. If you hold the hand of someone who is sick at the hospital, just because you show you care, because you're there for that person. If you're a leader in an office, someone knocks at your door, wants to talk to you, Someone comes to you at a cocktail party, at the cafeteria, in the hallway or the elevator, and you pay attention and you give undivided attention to this person, that person seeking your attention, you touch to greatness. You change this person's life. The person is the world. You change the world. Sorry, it's my rationale, simple one, but that's how I got to that title. Because I would love to have this place and this moment of 15 minutes, of 30 minutes, sorry, with you, and sometimes exceptionally an hour when I have guests or several guests here on Zoom, because I take Zoom to have you coming and join me. And if you want to, you can, you're always invited. The process is simple. You send me a message on LinkedIn and I send you a link for you to use, and then I get you into you go to the waiting room, but then I get you in, and then we're together here live, and you can tell me, you can share with me whatever you want, or I can coach you, I can mediate the situation just for that short period of time, but we can touch on something, at least we can give it a try. So, sorry, I'm looking for something, but I don't find it. Oh, yes, because if you're sending a message, I have to see it on my phone. You have all the details today of the backstage. Now let me move into the topic because it's an important one, and I don't want to miss this with you. I want to at least, again, I'm not pretending I can cover a whole subject in a half hour. I can just touch on it, share with you some insights, have you react if you could, on the comment line in LinkedIn or on YouTube. That's places where you can comment. I think also everything else, Instagram and Facebook, you can definitely put a comment there, and it will be very welcome. So all I'm trying to say to you now is, and I'm going to get finally to these messages to find out if you are sending me one, and now I'm ready in case you do to join me in this studio. Why do I want to talk about mediation today? Because conflict resolution, difficult conversations, is a topic that comes back pretty often in the coaching space, obviously, especially if I coach managers, leaders, executives, C-level executives, board members, for-profit, non-for-profit, federal agencies, government agencies, here, elsewhere, overseas. I have this privilege to have clients from all over the world that are really working in this kind of environment. Then I have the professionals, then I have the entrepreneurs. Everybody has his own world, has his own situation. When I coach them, conflict is what they fear the most, probably, because they're going to have to handle someone who's difficult, someone who's resistant to change, a group of people, a team, because I coach now more teams than I coach individuals, and groups more than I coach individuals. And these people that I coach and these groups that I coach, if it's not about conflict, it's about something close, but there is definitely things they need to convey, to communicate to some people who are not so receptive sometimes, or because there is agendas, politics, all kind of reasons that people are going to make it more difficult. That's conflict. So what is really the essence of conflict? With the experience of that, just that, and the mediation that I've been also privileged to do for the last 7 years or so, it's to, and in worst cases, for me, the worst case scenario in litigation, and it is not litigation, it's mediation, it's to avoid litigation, is divorce. And I've been really taking in time to certify, to do a lot of practicum, and work with a lot of colleagues on divorce mediation. It's not my favorite mediation, but it's definitely my favorite one. When I see two parties walking away from leaving the mediation table with one sense that would not have been done without mediation, which is getting that they really feel inside, emotionally and rationally, that they have a fair deal, a fair agreement. If I reach that goal as a mediator in a neutral role, pure neutral role, And I'm going to be a little bit direct for mediation, why I have a little skepticism about some mediation that I feel are not that neutral and not that unbiased. It's difficult to be unbiased anyway. There's always an unconscious unbiased, subconscious unbiased bias, and that's for everybody. Even for the most neutral person who intend to be neutral, there will be always unconscious bias. Unconscious bias. It's impossible, but I would say that you have to optimize that. So you get to a 90%, 95%, but this is definitely not 50 or 30 or 20%. I'm talking about neutrality. How can you have a mediator in the middle of people who are fighting if it's not someone who has no opinion about one or the other and never listens to, never has in mind to give a preference to one or the other or give a privilege to one another? It's not a debate. In the American elections, not a debate, right? So I'm not taking any side, but I'm really shocked by how much the people who are facilitating those debates are absolutely biased. So this is not the case of a mediation. It can be. If you see as a client of a mediator any kind of bias, please leave the mediation right away. Say goodbye, I'll go somewhere else. This is important. And why mediation, by the way? Why mediation? Judges of courts, especially in the divorce cases, it's a family court most of the time, right? They love mediators because it saves them a lot of time. They have a load of cases. It goes over years and years, and people wait months and months to get in front of the family judge. Sometimes there's emergencies, or some things are changing the priorities, but the judges love mediators and they want people to first go to mediators. That's why I got busy a few years ago taking all these cases coming from the court itself and saying, please mediate those cases. And most of the time, they could really mediate and resolve their issues without the court, without the aggravation, and making the judge the person who judges, or an arbitrator who is, in fact, also an authority in the matter. A mediator is no authority. A mediator just facilitates the people to agree, and they come both voluntarily at the table of mediation to mediate. And that's for every mediation. Divorce mediation, commercial mediation, small court mediation. I did also that in my community. And I love the muscles that you develop with mediation. But there is one that I use that not many mediators do use because I'm a coach. I'm a certified coach. I'm an executive coach. I'm an MCC, as they call it, the Master Certified Coach. It's a very pompous title, master. I don't master anything, but I'm a master certified coach according to the standards of the International Coach Federation, the ICF. So I'm an MCC. Okay, great. I'm proud to be because it was a lot of work, but it's a lot of hours of coaching. And you have no idea how it helps me in mediation. And you have no idea how mediation helps me in coaching. So I want to just address the values of those things. So one reservation I have to share, and I'm sorry for my colleagues, mediators, for what I'm going to say, but it is important that I say it. One time I interviewed one mediator here, and I asked a question to her, here, live, and you can find it in my LinkedIn trail of all the videos or in the YouTube channel, the mediation one that I did the last time with a guest. And she is a fantastic mediator, and she's in New York, but she's an exceptional mediator because she's a divorced lady herself, has been divorced for many years. And maybe as she goes through the years and the divorce is behind and all the aggravation and emotional side of the divorce is behind, there is maybe a little layer of these emotional traumas to make her a little bit in the bias side. But I'm surprised, I'm shocked. When I was going to school, right, for becoming a certified mediator, in the practicum especially, I think 90% of the people in this room were divorced people. They were all mediators, but they were divorced themselves for divorce mediation. So now you understand where I'm trying to get to. And you will see that many wives, I mean, women are divorced more than men in this particular case. I don't know if there is a statistic proving that there is more women than men who are divorced. But I'm very privileged not to be someone who has any divorce in my background. So it makes me also very different. If not to promote myself here, it's to explain something about mediation. My shock, my reaction, my instinct told me why they are all divorced here. Does it make them really unbiased? And I could see through the cases we were sharing cases together, real cases. Practicum means we have clients, they're not paying for the divorce or very little, and they have mediators who are, learning the mediation as their mediators. And then we are watching each other. They know that we have a camera and that we are just a group of people learning. So we watch the mediation when the mediator is in the room with a camera practicing mediation with a case. And it was divorce in that case. I could see with my own eyes and my own heart and my own soul how much someone who went through divorce, and especially a big one, a aggravated one, a traumatizing divorce, which are most of the time what divorce is about, being now mediators. And I know they have probably a good purpose in willing to bring people and parties to come to an agreement. But you are, for those who are listening and watching and are mediators and are divorced, were divorced, they were gonna, don't be upset at me. I'm saying something that I really believe. So, and I saw it and I experienced it. I think it's not making you excluding you, especially if you make a living with mediation, which I'm not, is that I don't want to eliminate you or have the person who are watching me making a segregation, saying those who are divorced, were divorced in mediation are not good mediators. They must be, in fact, excellent mediators. But I just say, be careful, check things out, because if the person was freshly divorced and traumatized, let me ask you, emotions are beyond everything, right? It dictates almost everything. How can you say that you are unbiased if you have been through such an aggravated, emotional, traumatizing experience, and then be a mediator because you want to help people out to be mediators? Now, again, I don't want to take advantage. I'm very grateful that I didn't go through this kind of dispute. I went to a lot of commercial disputes, not a lot, but deeply aggravating disputes in my career, especially when I was an entrepreneur. And I'm still an entrepreneur, but peacefully now. When you have partners, when you have commercial misunderstandings and disagreements, and you bring a mediation to the table, it's the same. Before, maybe me, as I've been very traumatized by that, maybe I'm unbiased. I'm biased in a commercial mediation. I don't think so. But if it would be a similar high level of conflict mediation in a commercial case, maybe if it would remind me something, then one party would be maybe more like I was, and I would have some kind of a preference for this person. But I'm not an arbitrator. I'm a mediator. And out there, and that's now I would say the other side of what I try to convey here, is that as it's usually a mediation, and the mediator is really hired to make parties to agree, there shouldn't be any problem, even with someone who went through a divorce in their lives. But I say, I have noticed something about it. That, for example, a woman would immediately have some kind of a preference, even unconscious, for the wife in the case of a divorce. Does it make sense? I think it does make sense. There's nothing to be angry at. So the person about, if that person is a mediator and immediately, unconsciously has a bias for this wife because she was a wife, she went through a divorce, and now she's in front of a conflict with a wife and husband, and she has already a little bit of a preference, of a sensitivity for the wife more than for the husband. Then, as soon as that happens, the consequence of that is not so serious as it would be if this would be a judge. It's even more serious for a judge. A judge who's biased is a terrible judge. We can see this all the time. And how many people, hundreds and thousands, and maybe tens of thousands of people, are in jail today because of biased judges? It's horrible. And the justice system doesn't protect people about this. I don't think so, at least by just watching the news or reading the news, because I'm not watching the news, but I'm reading sometimes the news. All right, so I think I said enough. We have another 15 minutes, and I didn't get yet to the point, but I think I give you a framework by what I share with you. Be careful when you are the one who choose a mediator or a coach, in fact, generally, and you want someone unbiased, then you have to first admit and accept that anybody has a level of bias to a certain extent. It's called unconscious bias. Yourself have always an unconscious bias. So this unconscious bias is something to measure somehow, by interviewing the person or by evaluating, like you do a due diligence. It's a serious matter. You are selecting a mediator to resolve a conflict. And if it's a divorce, it's very serious. There's children involved. There's a family involved most of the time. That's very, very, very serious. But the litigation that we avoid by just hiring a mediator, saving so much money, which is really the big, big advantage of mediation too, is that you're not going to use a lawyer other than just to write a final agreement. It's just incredibly money saving. A mediator will not charge you what a lawyer does, and it's not going to go as for such a long time, not even anything, not an inch comparable to what the litigation takes in terms of time. So mediation is definitely, if it's not the present already, because there is a lot of mediation going on, it's definitely the future. All right? So what did I want to say about mediation itself and conflict in general? We have two parties or more that disagree. And I will tell you why the coaching is so important in my case, or why I feel that I have a huge advantage to be also a coach. Is because most of the time, divorce, commercial, any conflict, any dispute, there's a huge problem of communication. You can be married for 30 years, 40 years, and never really communicated with your partner or with your your wife or your husband. 40 years without communicating, 40 years without giving attention, paying attention to what the person really means or what that person really says. And when there is a dispute, which is very human, to disagree on something, there is no compassion, no empathy to the other, especially if the thing is repeating itself. Now, reasons of divorce are multiple. If it's mental, if someone is which is a classic, addicted to something, and that breaks the balance of a couple, of a family, destroys, in fact, the balance of the family because one of the parties is addicted to alcohol, to whatever. That obviously involves psychology, therapists, different other parties that you bring to the mediation if the mediation continues. And when it continues, and there is this kind of issues in the middle of it, communication is one of the consequence of why people do not communicate. Lack of empathy and compassion is going to be emotionally on the way because people cannot agree when they lack those attributes. So you understand that any dispute, any conflict has already two sides of the story. This is why you see a mediator turning left, turning right, balancing the number of questions equally to each side. And what I do usually is I take a paperboard and I just draw a line to make two columns and take each side's expectation, desire, requirement, right? Inquiries, elements, components of an agreement. What would you do to agree with this other person? What do you need? What do you want? I have that on one side. What do you want? I have the other one on the other side. And we'll have this in front of our eyes constantly. And we're going to realize, if we communicate a little bit, that if we have 12 or 20 lines of desires, of requirements from each side to come to an agreement, that we are going to cut this in half or even more, that they have in fact common requirements that are merging. They're not opposite. They're completely, in fact, in agreement, no parallel lines, just really merging. But they just didn't communicate about that. Unbelievable, right? Commercially, most of the time, they didn't establish an agreement properly. They did not really clarify and take the time to have clear terms in their agreement, in their venture. If it's two partners, if it's about sharing a profit, if it's about money, it's most of the time, by the way, both divorce and commercial, a lot of money involved, especially we go to the US side of things and not other countries. Money is top. In other countries, it's a little bit more emotional than it is here. Or the emotion goes along, but with the dollar sign too. Somewhere else, it's a little less aggravating people. Okay. That's my cultural not bias this time. It's my cultural experience, multicultural, that makes me see sometimes, where we have some advantage and where we don't. So I hope that you follow me. We have another 5 minutes, but all of the things I say, I hope make sense to you. We have to go through, I think, about five elements in all disputes and adversity issues. One is to understand both sides. That's the position I have to take as a mediator or as a coach. And the coaching part of it, by the way, is sometimes to take one apart and just make sure that this person understands the other. Reframe. They use in a mediation another word than reframe. In coaching, it's reframing. I repeat to what you said, but I said it in another way to make it even clearer, or the way I understood it, which kind of shows I'm a sounding board as a coach, and I repeat to you what I heard, and then you know that I heard you well, and I understood you well. In mediation, we call it looping, right? Or something similar than looping, which is I repeat exactly what you said, and I use the same words if I can, so that you not only understand that I understood you, but I took note of everything that you said. And that also should be the case by the other party. But thanks to me, the mediator, my responsibility is to make sure I heard you well. And your side, I heard you well. Because this now I know equally what I hear on each side, and I want to make sure that both of you understand it. But the coaching side of it is, if you don't want to understand it, you have some kind of a resistance. Each time you understand, you hear one word and you understand another, then I have to take you apart and just see what's the problem there. And I'm not, again, I'm not a therapist. If it has a psychological reason, I'll bring in a therapist. But for me, like I would bring an expert in finance if we have details of financial details that we have to deal with. And I'm not a financial expert. So I'll bring the expertise into the mediation to make sure we are clear. Because in the mediation, amazingly, which is incredibly helping the coaching side of things, when I address communication and efficient communication, is that you cannot afford one misunderstanding. You cannot afford one misunderstanding if you want this to last, if you want these people to leave the mediation table with peace of mind. I'm not saying it's a miracle mediation. Absolutely not. It's a hard work for the mediator because it's constantly to make that the people understand that they understand or don't understand each other. And in coaching, it's about making people formulate and internalize concepts that are true, not going into a narrative like they do in politics, but really get the true story, because otherwise you're not going to make a good decision. By the way, it applies to politics too. People who make decisions are, in fact, have a huge magnitude. And I always take advantage. It's just the election time. So I'm also sensitive. The world is crazy. Everything goes crazy because masses of people are misled by what they look in the news, by what they hear, and the amount of lies and the amount of I don't know, appropriation of truth. It's kind of stealing the truth from the truth and then making it create a narrative, which is a story that doesn't exist, a myth. And then people are going to follow it because it resonates with them. It's something they want to hear, but it's not the reality. Oh, God. Anyway, you need to understand both sides. That's the first rule of thumb here for mediation. The second thing is really understand that mediation really will save you money. So the cost effectiveness of using a mediator is a key element of why mediation is a good choice. But just choose the right mediators. I also like, by the way, to propose always a co-mediator. When the case is a little bit more difficult, when we are two mediators, especially a male and a female in a divorce case, and we have a couple in front of us of each gender. I have to precise this because it would not be as relevant for another type of a couple. So I'm just saying, so two mediators that would be male for two males or two females if it would be two females, right? That's what I'm trying to say. The sensitivity of the gender side of things is very important in mediation, and I think that's a good idea to be two, especially when the case is difficult, very challenging case. After that, I want to say that we need to manage emotion. A mediator has to be very good at balancing emotions. Pause, stop the mediation, even postpone the next session to the next session and stop it in the middle if the emotional side is taking over the rational side, right? It's all this kind of thing you need to measure in the moment. Finally, you have to control over the outcome of the mediation. You have to maintain the neutrality, the client's objectivity. You have to be really not an arbitrator, not an authority, a facilitator, and very agile and very sensitive. And lastly, you kind of want the future relationship to be preserved to a certain level of quality. And when I say parenting, and I see really a couple who have children and get divorced, when I use the word parenting, it calms them down immediately. If they are steaming up and they are yelling at each other, which I hate to see, but it is happening most of the time, if I use the word parenting, boo, the voice is calming down, goes really down immediately. I say, hey, did you think about parenting now? 1 second. You're parents, you're not, and stop calling your child your child. It's your child, both of you, child. There's this tendency that the mother will say, or the father, it's my child. No, it's your child, of both of you. And now, what do you do for that child? That you decide to separate one thing, but now what about the child or the children? And all these discussions after that, and negotiation, who is picking up at what time at school, and this and that. It's very, very, very thorough, very emotionally challenging, and we need to be very much on top of all of that. Okay, so I have to quit because it's already 2 minutes after the time. And this thing is, the mediator is there to understand both sides, to make sure that it's a cost-effective exercise for both parties, to manage the emotional side of the exercise, to control over the outcome, that it is going to be a fair outcome. And there will be a letter of understanding, a memorandum, we call it, of understanding at the end of this whole thing. The mediator will write a memorandum of understanding for a divorce, and the couple will submit it to their lawyer, who will write a final agreement that will be, but the MOU, the memorandum of understanding, by the law, is recognized as a binding document. So it's not a joke. At the end of this mediation, when both parties agree that it is now complete with the mediator writes this MOU, and the MOU binds them into what they agreed upon. And what I really think, which I see, really, it's the truth, it's the magic of it, is that they walk away from this exercise with peace of mind, that they are no one here is taking advantage of the other. There is no winner, no loser. That's all I'm trying to do. And the same applies to a conflict resolution issue in an organization or in a company. So then you have to make sure that once this agreement has been sealed to some extent, it opens some doors to be revised in the future. We can go back to different elements of the agreement, obviously. Children are going to grow, there's all kinds of things that are going to change, but the future relationship of the parties that have disagreed have to also agree on preserving their future relationship. And that's another part I want to finish it on, because it applies to both things, coaching and mediation, when it comes to conflict resolution. Those 5 elements I just said, I think recap pretty well what you're looking for when you want to hire a mediator or a coach. Thank you for being here today. I hope it helped you. I hope it get you at least some basic information. And I will finish with one quote that comes from the Ethic of the Fathers. And it is be like Aaron, one who loves peace and pursues peace, who loves people and brings them together. Never forget those values. One who loves peace was Aaron. It's a biblical character, and he was the brother of Moses. And he loved peace and pursued peace all his life. He was recognized for that. It was his big merit because he loved people and he brought them together. So here it is. It's our mission. Thank you very much and have a wonderful weekend and see you next week.